Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the Soviet T-54-55 tank series, which is the most produced tank in history. Before I start this video, I want to say that there will be two parts to the history of the T-54-55 tank series, simply because otherwise this video would be too long. If you know about this tank already, but want to learn more about the history of it, then this video is for you. In case you don't know anything about the T-54 tank, here's a short description of it, and once you know that, you'll be ready to watch the video and understand it. The Soviet T-54-55 is the most produced tank in history with around 100,000 units produced. It was developed in the aftermath of World War II. There it quickly rose to prominence as the main battle tank for the Soviet Army and its Warsaw Pact allies. It's equipped with a D-10T 100mm gun and up to 205mm thick armor. After its production, it dominated battlefields across the whole world and it's still in use today by many armies. I will definitely make a more detailed video about the T-54-55 tank series on other specific things in the near future, but for now, let's get into the history. The T-54 and the T-55 tank series are a series of Soviet main battle tanks that were introduced a few years after the Second World War. By the end of 1945, Nizhny Tagil created the first prototype of the T-54 tank. Fast forward, in the late 1950s, it became the main battle tank for the Soviet armored units, other armies of Warsaw Pact countries, and many other nations. With about 90,000 to 100,000 units produced, the T-54-55 is the most produced tank in history. It served the Soviet Union until it was replaced by the T-62, T-64 and the tanks after. But today, it's still in use by up to 50 other armies worldwide such as Cuba, Cambodia, Nigeria and Pakistan, just to name a few. The predecessors of the T-54 were the T-34 and the T-44, which were both created during the Second World War. If you compare the T-44 with the T-54 from 1949, it's very easy to see that the T-54 looks very similar to the T-44, especially the turret. The T-34, which has been described as the tank that won World War II, had the best firepower, protection and mobility for its cost. And throughout the Second World War, its development never stopped and it continued to perform well. But there was one problem. The designers had a hard time including the latest technologies into the T-34. Either that, or they just couldn't do major developments as it would have interrupted the production of the T-34. And during wartime, this is not a viable option. In 1943, the Mozarov Design Bureau created the first T-44 tank, which I mentioned earlier. At that time, its performance was better than the T-34's. Even though the cross-country performance was near the same, the T-44 had superior armor and a much more powerful 85mm gun. But by the time the T-44 was ready to be produced, the Soviets already upgraded the T-34 to use the same 85mm gun. Even though the T-44 was better in many other ways, lots of T-34s were already being made, so having more of them outweighed having fewer, better tanks. Although the T-44 did not fight in a single battle during the Second World War and wasn't really in use any time after, the development work did not go to waste. The designers continued to use the T-44 as the basis for further improved guns, in which they experimented with a 122mm gun, but later decided that a 100mm gun was better suited for such a tank. After World War II, the Soviet Union desired a newer and more powerful tank. The T-44 would have been an option, but it still had a lot of deficiencies, so they went on to create the new T-54 tank. For the T-54, they used a turret holding a 100mm rifled gun and was mated to a T-44 hull. Like the T-34, the T-54 has no turret basket and the crew must move with the gun if the turret traverses. The first T-54s were superior to the tanks used in World War II and theoretically better than the newest tanks of potential enemies. The T-54 slowly entered production, and there were 3 submodels built over time. The T-54 from 1947, the T-54 from 1949, and the T-54 from 1941. And yes, I am using images from War Thunder for this one. The T-54 from 1947, which was the first series of the T-54 to be built, was a little bit different from its prototype because it had thicker armor, 18mm on the side, 30mm on the roof and 20mm on the bottom. As the production of the first version of the T-54 1947 ramped up, quality problems started to show. That was when the production stopped and the newer version, the T-54 1949, was designed. Several changes were made and the new turret was fitted. The new dome-shaped turret with the flat sides was greatly inspired by the IS-3 heavy tank. Also, the Fender machine guns were removed and replaced by a single bow-mounted machine gun. And on top of that, the transmission was modernized and the track was widened to 580mm. This second version of the T-54 entered production in 1949. Another modernization was made in 1951. It had a new turret without side undercuts as well as a new telescopic gunner's sight. Now you know pretty much everything there is to know about the development history of the T-54. As this was the first part about the history of the T-54-55 series, I'm going to make a second part where we will be talking specifically about the T-55. What other tanks would you like to see a video about? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.
Alpha Beta.